Hi, Nicole.
Welcome, everybody. Tonight's topic is reinforcers in the SPED classroom. And just want to go around and introduce ourselves for anybody that might be new. I'm Marianne from Special Ed Spot. And below me, I think, in the window, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Go ahead.
I'm Pam from Mrs. P's Specialties.
And I'm Chris from Autism Classroom News.
We wanted to talk about reinforcers, how you decide what reinforcers to use, what you use. If anybody has any questions to start out with regarding reinforcers in the classroom, go ahead and type them in the box so we can make sure that that we get your questions answered. And we'll go ahead and start. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure. I actually have somewhere in my garage a very large box of reinforcers because over the years, as I've met different kids, I've gone and gotten reinforcers that worked for them. But off of my desk, I actually pulled my glitter wand, which I can actually sit and watch for hours. But I've had kids that really, they like things that are very visual, but not making noise. And so I have a whole host of things that are very visual, but don't make noise, which are actually harder to find than you think they were. I used to have a kid who'd work for any kind of little coins, and he wouldn't give them up. We used to have a kid who worked for beads. But the most interesting kid that I ever had, and that really taught me that reinforcement is more than about the things, it's more about how you do it and and how individualized it is I had a kid who worked for tape. And we could not find, when I walked into the classroom, his teacher said, nothing is reinforcing for him. There are no reinforcers. And so I said, well, if we leave him alone in the room, what happens? And they said, well, I don't think anything will happen. So I said, let the other kids go to recess. We're going to let him wander around. So he wandered around. He wandered over to the teacher's desk. He got the tape, tore off a piece, turned it inside out. That's my tape. Turned it inside out and started playing with the sticky part of it. And walked around the room, happy as a clam, just playing with the tape over and over and over. And he would do it I think he'd do it forever if we let him. Just walking around, kind of going like this. So, of course, I'm mean. So I went over, I took the tape away, and I asked him to sit down. And he sat down, and I gave him the tape. And I asked him to do another one-step direction. And when well, that was good.
Uh-oh. No.
And
then she gave him the tape back.
Well, that's a new one. I don't think that's ever happened to us that quickly before.
No, it is
not. Also joining us while Chris was talking, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Erin?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. I'm Erin. I blog over at You Ought to Know. I teach kiddos with autism between the ages of about 4, 5 to 8. To 8 years old. So sorry.
I know Chris was there. She comes. Hello.
And she's down.
I got the snap and everything went away. No idea why. Unless Marianne kicked me out.
No, I didn't kick anybody out today.
Anyway, so I sat down and discovered I could do like a whole set of trials with him just using this piece of tape. And so I went and got that night I went out and got a whole bunch of stuff that was sticky that was more age appropriate than tape for a preschooler. And we started just having a whole host of sticky things, and it worked with him. And it gave us enough variety that he didn't get tired of it. And when he did get tired of it, we also found that a lot of it was how you sell it. It's not just what the item is. If you can make it more exciting because you are interacting with it, then that's even better. And so, we would start hiding it and go, where is it? Where's the tape? We have to find the tape. And so then we would make it like this game. And so eventually the game became reinforcing, and we could kind of move off of tape onto other things. So sometimes you have to really look, but there is always, as Nicole is saying, there is always a reinforcer, and you just, It's just a matter of being an undercover detective and trying to find it.
Yeah, I had a lot. Go ahead, Pam. You're fine. Go.
I think it's important to remember what's reinforcing for our students isn't necessarily what's reinforcing for us. One of the oddest reinforcers I've ever had in my room is a Q-tip that the student wanted cut up so he could roll it. He would do anything for those Q-tips.
Yeah.
And I would never, ever have thought of giving a student a Q-tip. So I think it's important what you said about following the kids' cues and looking outside of what we find to be reinforcing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a student who likes to clean as his reinforcer, which is a reinforcer for me too.
Exactly right.
But yeah, I've had students with so many interesting reinforcers. That's the word I want to use. I had a kid who would work for a little bit of lotion on his hands, or and I'm not quite sure, because it wasn't the scent part that I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he enjoyed lotion, so he could interact with it, and that was fine with me. It's just finding something that is going to motivate the student. I have a student currently who's been bringing in video game cases. And he's happy to sit there with the case for, a minute, just check out what's in his case. But
Amber has a question about what our thoughts are about allowing students to STEM with a reinforcer. How do y'all feel about that?
I think it depends on the student for my class. Initially, if they've earned it, it's their right to play with it however, but I want to shape that. So I quickly try and put myself into that situation and make it even better by interacting with it and shaping how it's used.
Exactly. That's pretty much what I was going to say.
Yeah, and I think that it also depends on how obsessed they get with it. If they will never give it up, then stimming with it really isn't great. But in reality, we all stim. The glitter one sits on my desk because I once sat on a couch and watched it for about 30 minutes. And my boss looked at me and said, "You've been self-stimming for about 30 minutes. And I said, "Yes, and I'm not crying and I'm not killing anyone. So we're going to call that a win."
And I'm sitting here picking my nails, so.
Twirling your hair.
We all have them. And I think it's a matter of knowing when to use them, when to stop, being able to move away from it to get something done if it's interfering with instruction. And so one of the questions I often get too is, what do I do when the kid won't give something back? And so my response is always, the first thing that I teach them is I hold out my hand and I say, "My turn." And it's amazing, first of all, how many kids will give you back things when you just hold out your hand and say, "My turn." Whereas if you say, "Okay, time is up," they're not going to give it back. But I often will do a whole bunch of sessions where it's like they get a long turn, I wrestle it away from them after I say my turn, and then I immediately give it back. And they go for a long term and I get a short turn, and then slowly my turn gets longer and their turn gets shorter until they begin to expect that they're going to be able to get it back. And that's really, I think, the key to that.
I've learned so often in my classroom that later never comes for a lot of my students.
Right.
So parents will say, "Oh, later," but then they'll never give it back. So they don't learn to trust the my turn and then they're going to get it back. Building that trust has been important for our classroom.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen for most kids. I mean, that's not just our kids.
Oh, absolutely.
How many times do you remember your mom saying, "Later, we'll do it later"? It's like, that meant never.
Right.
Don't bother me now.
Or maybe means no.
All done. That's a good one, Ember. And have them put it in a basket. And that's a really good idea. Using a parking spot, so it's not I'm taking it away, but we're putting it there. You can see it. It's still there. It's not going away, but it's not interfering with the instruction. And I think that's awesome.
That's a great idea.
A lot. I used to have a kid who wouldn't let go of coins. And everybody's like, "He can't do anything because he won't let go of the coins." And I put a box down and I said, "Okay, park the coins." And the first time I helped him. And then as soon as he found it, he got it back. It was like, "Oh, okay, park the coins. I'll do my work. I'll pick them up." and we'll move on.
Yeah.
And they were like, it's magic. I'm like, no, it's a box.
You brought your magic wand.
Right.
Well, I know that one of the things, like in working with regular ed teachers, and if I had a kid that was going back and forth for something, and it's like, okay, we'll use a reinforcer for them, use something that they're really going to like. Well, I would get from them so many times, well, I can't find anything that that they like. And it comes down so many times to me to knowing the student, knowing the person, knowing the kid, and knowing what they're going to like and what they're going to find reinforcing. And so many regular ed teachers, at least ones I've worked with, a lot of them aren't used to doing that type of, they're used to taking away things from kids to play with. And it's like, okay, but will it keep this child quiet? Will he do his work? Will he listen to you while he's tapping a wand on his leg or something like that?
Tool versus toy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have often.
So I think it's important to know the kid that you're working with. I mean, I've had one that their reinforcer was to vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
They loved to vacuum. I had a pair of brother and sister, not at the same time, a couple years apart. They happened to be very organizationally skilled, and they absolutely love to clean.
Yeah.
And that when you finish your reading, look, you can do this. You can clean. It's oh good, okay. It's like yay. That's like you said, that's a win for us too. So
absolutely. I was going to add in. Someone was mentioning reinforcer. Just talking about reinforcers in general. I always start my year doing a preference survey, and the first week or so of school, my centers are reinforcers, and I just track what my students are engaging with and for how long. And it kind of gives me an idea of what reinforcers they like a little bit, what they like a lot. Mm-hmm. And I track that, and then we create a hierarchy in my classroom, and we don't always go for the iPad reinforcer. Those are for big brand new behaviors that we want to reinforce big time. And so sometimes we'll just, you get a toy for a minute, like a little McDonald's Happy Meal toy. It just depends on the reinforcement, the level. So we chart for most of my students, a high and a couple mediums and some low level reinforcers. And then for new skills, we use the high. Skills that we're intermittently reinforcing, we use medium and low reinforcers often.
We do the same thing.
That's a great idea.
We do the same thing, and then we post it so that the TAs in the room can see it as well as the therapists.
Yes, I'm going to pull up. I also send home a reinforcement survey that I have on my blog, so I'm going to pull it up and share it with everybody so you can grab it.
Nicole had mentioned, I believe it was Nicole, about using timers. Mm-hmm. And I was a big timer person. And all kinds of different timers. And sometimes those timers are reinforcers too. And, being able to play with them or make them run out, make them run down, make their sound and things like that. But to use it for, okay, now your time is up. Because especially if you're using some type of visual timer, whether it's a timer with lights or just the visual timer with the red section, it was a little bit easier for some of them to be able to give up that thing at that time when the time limit is over.
Yeah.
And I posted a link to a post that has a whole bunch of different preference assessments, ways to do reinforcer assessments that are all available online. And they go everywhere from doing observational types of actual reinforcer assessments to things that you can send home. And there's one that's called Jackpot that I really love, especially for older kids, because I can individualize it. These kinds of things, and they have more, especially for kids that are going into general ed, they have a lot of the things that you might use for those kinds of kids: sitting in the teacher's chair, leading a lesson, erasing the board, running the projector, and gets to go have lunch with the coach and things like that. I had a kid who used to get 5 letters, 1 letter every week, if he got all of his points every day. When he got all 5 letters, he got to have lunch with the gym coach, which he absolutely loved. The gym coach actually absolutely loved it too. So that's there so people can find it. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's online to be a tool. And I think the other thing is too to realize that there's not always one answer. We've talked about different levels of reinforcement, and I think sometimes people think that there's one reinforcer. And I'd love to say that there's one answer. And then people will tell me, well, it's not working anymore. Right. Eventually you get tired of it and you don't want it anymore. So the more things you can find that are reinforcing and the more you can pitch them up, the better as well. And the more you can pitch them up yourself, because eventually we do want to fade them out. We don't want a 20-year-old who has to get time with the glitter wand after every single thing he does right. We want to pair it. We want to spread it out with token systems and spread out our reinforcement and things like that, so we don't have it forever. But it is a really powerful tool for helping kids learn new skills. Even if they're being compliant, look at whether or not their actual performance is getting better or not in terms of whether or not you need the reinforcer.
Started pairing myself a lot with the reinforcer and trying to make myself more reinforcing than the actual reinforcer. So, while we engage with the reinforcer, we might do some tickles, and then in between, maybe I'll give you a tickle or two and those kinds of things, just to make myself more reinforcing than the toy or the glitter wand or the putty or whatever it may be. But I always try to make myself more reinforcing.
And I look for reinforcers that need your help. So I love wind-up toys for little kids and even some of my older kids. Some of my older high school kids used to work for getting a manicure at the end of the day. So that was something that kind of required somebody else. I had another guy who worked for decorating the classroom, and he got 10 minutes at the end of the day to decorate the classroom if he got all of his quarters. And so looking at things like that, they don't all have to be things. They can also be activities. And if you can do it with something that you have to be part of or a peer has to be part of, that reinforcement value is going to rub off on that other person. And that's going to make you more reinforcing by yourself.
And Nicole wanted to know about printables for schedules of reinforcement and any blog posts to help reduce the rate of reinforcement.
I have one on making it more effective, so I'm going to try and find that and see if it's included.
I have not written it in a blog post yet, but one of the things we do is we have a token strip that they use to work for so that they can earn their reinforcement. And then as they are able to go longer and longer between periods of reinforcement, we change the picture. So if it's a picture of a ball, we first cut it in half, and the first half hour they get the first half of the picture, and then the next time they get the second part, and then they get their reinforcer, so that they're still cashing in and getting a lot of verbal praise with their first half of the picture, but that they're going a whole hour without getting the reinforcer, before getting the reinforcer.
I will change out the background of what the reinforcers are going on or what the tokens are going on, so that the reinforcer comes, like, instead of every other one, then it comes every 2 times or something like that, to spread it out to a different interval. So the pretty much the manipulatives that are being used on the schedule or on the board stay the same, but I just change the backboard of it when they're ready to.
That's a great idea. Yeah, you just, because where I have the high, low, medium reinforcers listed, I also list out the behaviors we're reinforcing in the increments. So it's just posted in my classroom for everybody. But that's how I do it. And I also posted, I did a blog post about using reinforcement effectively, and I put that over there in the comments.
One of the other types of reinforcement that we focus on in our room is the staff giving a lot of verbal reinforcement. So when I first started to train them, I would play this tape that had random sounds on it. It was a bell, so that every time they heard the bell, they had to praise somebody near them for something. And it got them really focused on highlighting all the different ways that our kids were complying and showing progress in different areas. So And then I was just like, we fade out for the students. I also faded it out for the staff, and they were able to continue the verbal praise without the bell.
I love
That is a great idea and a great way to use that material too. I've used one like that before, but I haven't done that.
Yeah, I have the CD with the incremental chimes.
Yep.
Haven't pulled that out in a while. I might have to.
It was really helpful, especially if you have a staff member who tends to be a little bit on the negative side. It really forces them to regularly look around and focus on something positive.
Mm-hmm. Great idea.
That last one that I just posted actually talks a little bit about fading, but there's not something specific. Yeah, and I've started using a lot of reinforcement phrases in my visual cueing kit. There's a whole set of different ways to praise because you always want to pair praise with any reinforcers. And I always find myself saying the same thing over and over. So if I can look at something quickly and get some new ideas.
I've always tried the ABC game in my head. So the first praise I give is going to be an A. The next one will be a B. The next one will be a C.
Oh, I can't possibly do that and teach the same.
I know. But
it's not in my skill set.
Varying my reinforcement.
That's a cool idea, though.
When I'm reinforcing for every behavior, I'm a little bit more with it then.
Wow.
I also really love using token boards for kids to fade them out, whether they're token boards for correct responding and instruction or token systems for behavior across the day. I find them to be a really good way to fade the immediate reinforcement out quickly. Because even some of my younger, more complex kids can get to independence with a token board pretty quickly and at least be doing 2 or 3 things before they get a reinforcer. And for behavior, I've done it by activity. So you get a token at the end of the activity if you followed all the class rules. But just beware that, we tend to do, then you get to go to the treasure box. And of course, the treasure box is reinforcing for some kids and not for others. We had a kid who really didn't care about it, but he loved to be the center of attention. So whenever he got to go to the treasure box, that was a cue to the whole class. The whole class would stop and sing, "He's a jolly good fellow," to him in the treasure box in this big production. But he loved it, and he would behave in order to get it. It was more meaningful to him. He didn't care what he got. And we used to ask families to send in like old Happy Meal toys that the kids weren't using anymore. And I always cracked up because inevitably in every class there was a kid who would pull something out. "I have one just like this at home." It's like, no, you don't. That's it.
You used to.
And now you'll have it again.
Yeah, I always put in my class wish list like old Happy Meal toys or just little trinkets that kiddos can work for. I've also used that ABC game like in staff trainings with my paras and have us just think of if we can fill in all the letters for the alphabet for praise phrases, basically. And so it just kind of gives us a better bank. And then I post them in the classroom and they have some
dance. I love it.
I like the Go Bailey dance. That's a good idea. It reminded me of a child I had that we did a special dance for, and she loved to dance. And and actually her reinforcer was actually being able to sing. And she could not read worth anything, and it took her forever to learn to read, but she knew words to Broadway songs. Like My Fair Lady.
Oh, I love it.
For her, she would do her work if she could stand in front of the class and sing. So Shall We Dance was her favorite song. And she was just over the moon about it when she got to do that. She's now in a special needs theater group too. So
that's so
cool.
I see Nicole has a question here too.
Yeah, we talked touch base a little bit about using reinforcers in general ed, as Nicole has brought up. And what experiences have you all had with that? Any?
I get the regular teachers who don't want to use reinforcers because they don't think the kids should need them.
Nobody else gets that, right?
Right.
I get that.
And I've started doing let's see, I wear glasses. So you have to wear glasses. Put my glasses on. Can you see anything? And of course they can't because my glasses are ridiculous. And then it's like, not everybody needs the same thing. That's not the way the world works. I wear glasses, you don't. You know, even if we wear glasses, we wear different glasses. So different kids need different things in the same way. Just because one kid needs a Band-Aid, everybody doesn't need a Band-Aid. And just because he needs a reinforcer doesn't mean other kids have to have a reinforcer, and we can explain that to them. Mm-hmm. Even preschoolers get it. You know, we try so hard to keep the identity of our kids with disabilities in preschool classes a secret. And it's really funny because you ask any of the typical peers and they go, yeah, he's a little different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and then you ask them what they want to know about it. And they're like, is he going to get any taller? But so I think really helping them understand that everybody having the same thing does not mean that it's equal for them. And I think also helping them understand that you're not bribing them. You're not giving them presents. You're using it in a specific way to increase specific skills. And I think the more that you can target specifically what skill you're trying to increase and help them see that, the easier it is for them to understand, because I think they just see it as I'm supposed to give them stuff and it makes them happy. So a lot of times they need, because they haven't had a lot of experience or a lot of training in those cases on behavior management. So they really need to understand the true function of it. And they've probably seen it done badly in a lot of different places too. Mm-hmm. We just give everybody. It's kind of like the way my mother raises dogs. Don't give it to him. He didn't sit. I know, but he wants one too. Reinforcement.
Yes. That's yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing that I see.
I agree.
We have the comment that the feedback they get is it's too distracting. I get that one a lot too. So I try really hard to make sure that I'm not giving a noisy toy. I'm not giving a big, shiny, bright toy. And a lot of time, little fidget toys work wonders to get them started and really realize that it is a tool to help and that it does have success. And then they're a little bit more open to some of my other suggestions.
It's a great idea.
One time we even went and did a small group type of training with some gen ed teachers. We had like a group within a grade level that got our kids when they needed to go for social studies or something like that. And so we took that core group of people. So that was like one, maybe two teachers per grade level in the elementary levels, K through 5. And so we did a training with them about it and did a lot of normal everyday things like glasses and other things like that for equating it. And it's like, oh, and when they could see it through a different pair of eyes, through a different pair of glasses, so to speak, they seemed to understand it a little bit more. I had one child who liked to tear up paper that was reinforcing, and the teacher, he did it quietly. Now, he would make a mess, and I eventually taught him to be able to put it in the garbage can or drop it in the garbage can after he tore it. But we gave him a do-a-tang folder of paper, several sheets of paper, and he tore it up just little bitsy pieces. And the teacher had a fit about it when he went to regular ed. And it's like, look, just put a garbage can next to him. And he just sits and he slips his hands into the folder and just tears very quietly. But she said, well, that's not what he's supposed to be doing. And I said, well, what are you doing during that time? Well, I'm telling him about the lesson. Well, he can listen if he does that. Mm-hmm. And I know that even between, siblings, there's similarities and differences like that. Somebody who can do homework without noise and somebody who has to have noise to do it or something like that, So, and when we used it as an analogy that way, it seemed to help a little bit. And I really did begin to see some benefits to that and some changes too.
Absolutely.
So that was encouraging.
That reminds me, like even staff meetings, people doodle or.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Get up and walk around or whatever. Mm-hmm. Our time is up for tonight. Does anybody have any last minute questions or comments? Nicole, yeah. I think everybody is in a fidgeter in some way. I mean, now we have phones to fidget with, or things like that too.
Absolutely.
And,
I've been
okay.
picking at my nails the whole time here.
Yeah, exactly. We want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and we will not be having a blab next week, as there is a Teachers Pay Teachers online webinar, and I believe a lot of us want to go to it. So we will pick up the following week, and we will send out ads with the topics on it ahead of time.
Yeah.
But we appreciate everybody coming and look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thank you.
And if there's something you want to talk about, just drop one of us a line.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I know some of you have emailed me, and it's on our to-do list.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Good night, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.